You're listening to the Laughing Couple podcast with your hosts, Brittany and Ryan Ostafy. Join them weekly as they discuss topics such as relationships, kids, sex, parenting, all unfiltered and all with a healthy dose of laughter. Please welcome your hosts, Brittany and Ryan Ostafy.
We have I feel like we've never had a podcast like this, and I'm really excited about it because I feel like it's purely going to be entertainment. Like, we like to entertain. We have Ali Weiss here. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'll do my best to live up to that expectation.
No
Even
pressure.
if it's not entertaining. So I have a full, what's the word I'm looking for? I got to admit to this.
Oh my God, Ryan was like, we got your pitch like in our.
Well, I think I'm admitting to this.
I know, but you said what are the words? So I was like, I will tell you the words. But like when we got the email pitch from our like Podcast Nation, Ryan was like, oh my God.
Yeah, like I'm telling this.
Go ahead. I'm gonna stop.
You are
Calm down.
sabotaging.
I was gonna let you take the fiddle. Go.
This is the Laughing Couple where we fight on an ongoing
my
basis.
mom and dad.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is real life, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it looks like to be
Tell
happily
your
married.
weird story. Go ahead.
So we get this pitch from your team. Awesome pitch, by the way. And I've never had a pitch that was presented to us in this fashion.
Specifically.
So good. The writing was so good. But then there's this like sentence that caught my attention, which was masturbating to crystals.
With.
Yeah. And I'm
With crystals.
I said, Brittany, I'm like, I don't know. I don't need to read any further.
Correct.
I'm like, I need to know what this even means.
Yes. He was like, book her in.
Book her in. We're in.
Let's go. I'm like,
I don't know what we're
Okay.
going to discover, but I'm sure I'm going to find out a lot about crystals.
Oh my God, my mother is going to be so proud when she listens to this. All of my accomplishments as a host, and really what sells me is the fact that I masturbated with the crystal. That's
100%.
what my parents want to hear.
I promise you, we will give you the platform to we'll
your-
edify the crap out of you, but we got to hear what this is.
Yeah, we do. Oh, okay. But before she gets into that, Ali, can you just give us like a rundown about like who you are, what you do, and then we'll go into the masturbating crystals because Ryan's gonna have a heart attack.
Thanks.
You're
I just
gonna
can't. I
explode
can't
if we
leave.
don't talk about
I can't leave this microphone without
Yes,
knowing.
Correct.
It's my pleasure. I put it on there hoping that someone would
Literally.
about it to make it all worth it. So my name is Ali Weiss. I'm a native New Yorker. I'm an actress, a writer, and on-air host. I have a podcast called Tales of Taboo where I explore subject matter that is considered socially unacceptable or outside the bounds of what is traditional or quote unquote normal. I do this by collecting anonymous confessions from my audience. So I will put out a casting call about, something I see on TV or I read about in a book, and it's always very far out. And I ask for people who have first-person experiences to let me know what it was actually like living through that. And they submit either through audio notes or written submissions that I read for them.
I feel like
That's
your
amazing.
podcast every week, it would just be like, you never know what you're going to get. Like, it's just so, I love that. Like the uncertainty of it, just been like, let's just roll with it. We've listened
Every
to
time. Oh, sorry. Go.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, every time I put out a casting call, I'm like, this is the week where I get nothing. This is the week where people are like, you've pushed it too far. I remember I did an episode about drug dealers and I was like, who is going to out themselves to me? You know what I mean? And all these submissions came in and it was amazing because it was like parents who were drug dealers, ethical drug dealers who lived in trap houses, like the full spectrum. And I was just like, I don't know what it says that current or former drug dealers trust me, but I think I'm doing something right. So far, I've never put out a casting call that I have not been able to fulfill.
So I have a very specific question to ask you about this platform. But before we ask that question, let's dive into the little game of the icebreaker that we do, which is the I love you and the annoying side of things. So you do have a partner right now.
I do.
You're enjoying life with that partner.
I am.
What part about your life do you not enjoy with that partner?
That's annoying.
Where are they annoying?
Right.
So I never thought that I would end up with a computer scientist or a coder, just anybody who's really into computers. I'm an analog gal, very IRL. I still don't really know how to use Zoom after 2 years, hence why I'm in a studio right now having someone do that for me. But we met and just instantly fell in love. My boyfriend codes for hours every day and is just in a universe that's parallel to mine, but not the same one. And he's also so smart and very passionate about what he does. And he tries to explain it to me, and it's just gibberish, you know? I don't understand any of it, but he's so happy to have somebody to talk to about it who like is open-minded and curious and interested. And I want to be that person for him, especially as his girlfriend, you know, but talking about like coding and math theory doesn't really like put me in the mood to have sex. And sometimes we talk about that, and the thing that he wants to do after is have sex. And I'm just like, honey, I don't think so. So I adore him. And I want to be that support system for him. But, you know, coding language, math language, just, I didn't do well in school. It's not for me.
In the sky. Have you seen that TikTok? I feel like that is that is you. And while he's talking and you're like, yes. When I go places high. And you're like, that's how I'm picturing
full-blown dissociation 100%.
So I've just got a business decision. I just like a thing that just popped in my head. And I think it's a wonderful thing since he is a coder, and you have to be very intelligent to be a coder. Yeah. But you also have to speak a language that nobody else understands.
Yes.
So when he's talking code to someone who doesn't understand code, you know what he should do is he should create a code that has like your sex drive in it. And as he continues to talk, the code reads and it starts to depreciate. And he just needs to realize that there's a safe zone and then there's a non-safe zone. So if he just codes in a little program that says, you've talked too much code, my libido is gone.
Allie's panties are not coming off.
You know, when you watch the grid and it goes green, yellow, red, like the bar goes up and down when you're testing your vocal levels or something. I feel like he needs one of those for code speak.
Yeah.
100%. Oh my God.
Like, it's not easy to take someone out. Well, actually, it is easy to take my wife out of the mood. Actually, and I don't mean that sounded rude. That sounded terrible. That sounded terrible. But here's the thing: if I know it's going to take my wife, I don't talk about the things that takes my wife out of the mood. And she may be in the mood, she may not be in the mood. I just don't talk. But
we're comfortable enough that we're like. I've literally said to Ryan, I said, "Listen, I've had like a long day, and you clearly had a day where you want to talk, and I've literally been like, I don't want to talk about this shit right now. Like,
we're still in the beginning stages of our relationship. We've been together for like 5 months, I think now, but it all happened very fast. We're so in love. We're so happy, but I don't know that I'm quite at the place yet where I can just be like, not today. You know what I mean? Like, I think if I did that, we'd end up getting into a fight about how I'm insensitive. So maybe when we hit the 6-month mark,
send him this podcast.
Send
him
I drop in and I just simply say like, code is cool, but you know what's sexy?
Not talking about it before sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are so sexy.
You are super sexy. Coding, not so much.
Not so much. Okay.
I really do think we need to build that bar. Thank you for the idea. That's very smart.
You're welcome.
I love that. Okay. So
the sexometer.
Let's talk about some of the things that you've
We're
done.
going to talk about crystals?
Oh my God.
Are we honestly going to avoid? Are we going to avoid?
We're not going to avoid it. Okay, let's get it. Let's have Ali explain that to us so that Ryan can focus and his code can be, it can be here, not over here.
I'm always green.
So in terms of like what your audience is down for, like how graphic do you want me to get? You want me to go?
We're down.
We don't have a filter. Like our podcast is usually very.
I think it's actually I think it's even described as unfiltered.
It is, yeah.
Okay, I love that. That's why you guys are my parents. I've decided that you've adopted me, even though you haven't consented. So I was knee deep in the wellness world when I first joined Instagram. I kind of got my career start as a wellness blogger, but I wasn't interested in traditional wellness, like supplements, exercise, like, talking to a higher power. I just thought that was all very boring, and it clearly wasn't working because everyone I knew in the wellness world was demented. And so I was like, I really want to go for the more alternative things. So along the way, aside from masturbating with a crystal, I actually wrote an article for Playboy where I put THC suppositories up my butt. I tried smoking essential oils out of a vaporizer. I wrote about like sex pretty candidly. And as part of those explorations, I read about this company that made I want to call them dildos, but they look nothing like a penis. Like they were literally just a polished rock. So it's hard to call them dildos,
Right.
but that's what they were. They were sex toys made from crystal. And you were supposed to choose your crystal based on whatever your like spiritual internal needs were. I don't remember what mine was called, but it was green, like jade or jade adjacent, I guess.
Sure.
And I saw it. I was just like, I have to use this. So I didn't masturbate on camera. Mom, if you're listening, I promise I didn't masturbate on camera. But I did make a sketch about like learning about the crystals and using the crystals for Instagram as part of a brand deal that I did with them. And that was just insane how I like exploited myself on the internet, not thinking twice about it. But when I did actually use it, did I feel like it had transported me to like some higher place? Not really, but I cannot lie. It was the best sex toy I've ever used.
Stop.
There was something about how like you're supposed to sync it to your body temperature before you use it.
Okay.
And like, I think if you hold it to your chest or something like that, it's in my drawer still, but I haven't used it in a while. You like hold it to your chest. And then once it warms sufficiently to your body temperature, then you're supposed to use it. So even though it is this rock, it's really heavy and therefore really like pleasurable, and it's kind of thick too. But it's the same temp as your body. So you don't feel like you're putting like something silicone in there or something artificial in there, which like has its time and place and could be very sexy, but there's just something really like earthy about the experience of using this. And like the orgasms are really good. I don't know why.
Where does,
and it could be used as like,
this is not sponsored, but where do we get these things?
Ryan literally.
The company was called Shock Rubs, you know, like chakras, shock rubs. And I think they're still in business. It was a couple of years ago that I worked with them, but I think they're still kicking, and like, no lie, I would highly recommend.
Well, for anyone listening to this podcast, dear Lord, hopefully they're still in business.
I feel like they could be like dual purpose if they're like this beautiful rock. It's like an art piece.
It is. And you're supposed to display them. And I'm
thinking that.
Yeah.
You got this art installation in your house.
It's just
that's
this
a pleasurable art installation.
It's just like a phallic piece of art that is
right. You have
beautiful.
Your candle, you have your crystals for like good energy in the room, and then you have your dildo. Like that's how you really balance a room.
I'm not gonna lie. I love the idea of my wife being pleasured by. I just love the idea of my wife being pleasured. Like so if someone says to me that it was the greatest orgasm that they've ever experienced, I'm getting that.
I am literally going to. I'm going to tell you that I swear to God, in the next probably 3 weeks, we'll get a delivery. Every month, Ryan is like,
whatever the delivery
he'll like
time
send
is.
me, do you want this? I'm like, I don't need sex toys. I don't need them. Like I have a plethora. I'm good. I also have you. So if we could just put a cap on that. But now you've introduced him to this like rock in your world.
And it just like becomes a spiritual experience innately. Like I'm not a really big believer in crystals. Sorry if that pisses off anyone in your audience, but I think a lot of people see this as just like an opportunity to really like get in touch with yourself, to flow. It wasn't about that for me. It was just, I had never felt anything like this before. It was just pure weight, and it was the temperature of your body. And it was just, you were using a sex toy, but it didn't feel like that. It was something kind of otherworldly. So yeah, by all means, you guys should try it, and then you should report back to me.
When you said that I could have
already in the works.
You're offering
I'm not going to be
like
rude. I'm not going to be rude to jump on my cell phone and hit order now, but I'm not going to lie. Like 7 minutes after this interview is over, I am going to go online and order this
I always thought
product.
I was the worst influencer in the world, and I was
The
so bad
best.
at Instagram, but it turns out I'm actually a good influencer after all.
All it takes is the greatest orgasm I've ever had in my life.
Yes, there you go.
You said I could have sex with The Rock, and I was literally waiting
The Rock.
for Dwayne to come over, and you're like, no, a rock. It's perfect. Okay.
You should look into doing some Instagram influencing with these.
It's
That's
like
a brilliant little
It's
strategy
like I
for
do that on the side or something.
Yeah.
It's so
A nice pitch.
weird.
Nice pitch.
Okay. Let's talk about your podcast. So you have so much, like such a wide range of topics. Do you have any favorites so far that you have left and you were like, oh my, excuse you. Sorry, this is also Ryan's work computer. So he's super unprofessional. It's fine. Do you have any like specific episodes that stick out to you that you're like, you left at being like, holy shit, like I feel rejuvenated, or I feel just like, I mean, for lack of a better word, touched you in a way that you were like, wow, because I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's difficult to choose. Like, they're all my babies, you know? Everyone who takes the time to contribute to my show becomes like such a part of me. And like I was saying earlier with the drug dealers, just the fact that people trust me enough as a stranger that they have a parasocial relationship with to dump their guts to. I finish every episode and I'm just like, wow, not only is this like the honor of my life, but I have learned things that I otherwise would not have been able to learn. And I think I really like to read, and I don't really keep up with the news so much, but I'm really into like feature articles or people who dig deep into subcultures. But the problem is with like a traditional reporter is you report, you don't really get to like sink your teeth into what's actually happening and live it. And I don't say this explicitly on my show, but a lot of the topics that I'm interested in do pertain to things that I've been through personally. Sure. And it's like me trying to find a bigger sense of community and people who might understand me. So again, it's really hard to choose, but I think getting into the episodes about like working for the wealthy was fascinating because people are really, as we know, interested in like reality TV culture and like Kardashian culture, rich person culture, and everyone aspires to this particular lifestyle. But growing up in Manhattan in the private school system, I knew a lot of these people that are like business bigwigs or whose parents were famous or who was on reality TV themselves. And I just saw behind the scenes, like how terrible a lot of that shit could be and how toxic and how a lot of these people who were great on television were actually bad people behind the scenes. And so to find people who had worked for a variety of powerful people and could kind of come out and say, everything is not as it appears on social media and as it appears on TV. That was like, I made an episode that was kind of tabloidy and fun and juicy, but it also delivered a strong message at the same time. Striking that balance can sometimes be difficult because other times I'll do episodes like I did one on death and grief. And it was beautiful what people were sending to me and just like letting me know how they processed grief and how society doesn't know how to handle death. But that was a very dark episode and it was kind of one note. So it's always really rewarding for me when I can make something that's highly shareable and juicy content and is going to lighten up your day, but also forces you to think outside the box of like what it is that you, but not any one individual, but us as a society currently value. I did 2 episodes on the fashion industry that were also very similar and one about nannies for the wealthy specifically too. So I have this whole little like block of like rich employee confessions, which was dope.
I think I saw a clip of one of the podcasts. I think it was in one of those episodes that you're talking about I think it was a girl saying like she punched like a prostitute or a hooker in the and her implant exploded. Was that in one of those episodes?
Yes,
like,
her boss did.
Oh my God. Like that.
Can you believe?
I can, which is like the saddest part. I can fully believe that happened.
It's insane. And it's so cool having these conversations with these people leading up to the episodes because it's like me and my DMs going back and forth with them being like, okay, like, yeah, you signed an NDA, but like, are there loopholes in your NDA? Has your NDA expired? It's like me, I want to like push them to talk, but I don't want to push them into any situation that could be illegal or get them in trouble. And there's also a lot of people who have said to me like, fuck it. Like this person was so terrible to me. It's anonymous. Let's do something about it. So being able to kind of be that like cathartic safe space for these people, but also make content that just gives you like a firsthand look into a very juicy industry is really rewarding.
It's interesting to me because I think we've all had shitty bosses. Right?
Yes.
And, you know, I know growing up for me, one of the things that the influential people in my life, the men in my life, they said, okay, as you're scaling your business, as you're growing into the business world, you're going to encounter shitty bosses. Don't burn any bridges. Don't say the wrong thing. Handshake at the very end of the day and go on as if everything else was great. Don't talk shitty about things. But at the same token, and I'm 100% responsible for this, I keep that stuff to myself. But if someone's a total asshole, and they treat you with disrespect and they treat the people around them with disrespect, why is it that we think it's okay to not say anything about that? Like, why are those people like exempted from being accountable for being total assholes? It makes no sense to me.
we're in this ecosystem where we're told that certain people are superior to us. And why? Because they make more money, because they've been working for longer, because they have a different title. I went to a very hippy dippy school my whole life. It was actually a Quaker school. I don't know if you guys know anything about Quakerism.
No.
I'm culturally, not religiously, but culturally Jewish, as is everybody else in New York City. But Quakerism is a sect of Christianity that's like profoundly nonviolent and believes in like equality for everybody. And so we were calling our principal by his nickname, our teachers by their first names. We talk about like world peace and justice instead of geometry. It was awesome. But something really valuable that I got from that was like, people need to earn your respect. Like seriously, it doesn't matter what kind of position you ascend to in life. I'm such a rejecter of the notion that like people with certain titles get to tell you what to do. And I know that's how it works in a traditional workplace, but I completely agree with you. If somebody disrespects you, you don't have to continue respecting them because they were your employer or they somehow know something more than you do. I think it sounds kind of tough and angry, but I don't think it is. I think people need to earn your respect and your time and your energy. So that's also something that I try to prove within my podcast is that people who are outcasted by society are called weird or strange or degenerates, which is a word that I've kind of like reclaimed amongst my following. I think that these are actually people with the most valuable lessons to teach us about life. So who is anybody to say that these people aren't worthy of that just because they make different choices, you know?
Yeah, I like that. And so here's my next question for you. So you grew up in this world. You grew up seeing it for what it actually is. But it would take a considerable amount of effort to expose that world when you're in that world.
Yeah.
Do you find that your podcast gives you a platform to say the things you want to say, but because you're saying it through someone else's experiences, it's almost like you're delivering someone else's message? I just keep thinking about Jennifer Aniston in that TV show,
So good.
The morning show. I don't know if you watch that show, but at the very end of it, she gives this dialogue about like, fuck you. Who do you think you are being able to tell me what I'm supposed to do and not supposed to do just because I'm famous? And I read this thing, this article that Jennifer Aniston had, and someone asked her the question, like, is that actually how you, like, I know you didn't write that, but is that how you feel? She said, honest to God, that's what I want. I've wanted to say that for years, but I can't.
Yeah.
I don't have the platform to say. So do you kind of use your platform kind of as a way to expose what you know, but not really expose it through you?
Yes and no. I think that I've always wanted to use my platform to talk about things that I never felt in my day-to-day life that I could, and certainly that other people don't feel that they have the freedom to. But I've rebranded a couple times on Instagram. And I think that back when I was a wellness blogger, and then when I was doing my old podcast, which was much more directly like mental health oriented, I shared a little bit too much about myself online to the point where I felt like it was too easy for somebody to have a parasocial relationship with me, not based on like my makeup routine or what I ate for dinner, but based on like my own mental health issues. And so when I was creating this new show and rebranding once again online, I really pushed away from that. And I was like, it's been enough talking about myself. Now I need to illuminate other people's stories. But the bravery that my listeners have shown me in submitting their stories has inspired me to start sharing more of mine. So actually in this exact moment, I'm starting to marinate on how can I share more of my own tales of taboo alongside what my listeners are sharing. So yes, I think for a while I did want to learn about myself, but also share things about myself through other people's stories. But that was because I did feel for a period of time overexposed. And I feel like I've balanced that now.
We're really fortunate to have like a whole bunch of different people, like experts, amazing guests. And a lot of the times they have things to teach our audience and to educate. And we often are used, I wouldn't say like guinea pigs, but a lot of the time we're very open. So we learn what they're speaking through like real life. Like we'll have a sex therapist on and hypothetically Ryan will share a story about a hypothetical, and it's obviously about us.
Right.
But like we learn a lot. Like it's like we have all these free therapy sessions, but there are times where I've stepped away from the podcast and I've said, listen, like I'm so glad that we are able to have this platform to share this information and make people feel like they're not alone, because a lot of the conversations we have, we know that our community is also experiencing, but at the same time, I feel like emotionally hungover after sometimes when we do these episodes, because it's so vulnerable. And it's just kind of like, sometimes it's a lot. It's overwhelming for me to like, I've just shared so much on this podcast about like our personal life. And it really is about balance, because sometimes it's a hard thing to meet at, for you to be like, okay, like that was super raw. And like, I love that we learned, but also like, that was like a lot of people listen to this. And like, there's just this space 100%. Of like a hangover.
I feel like with my old podcast, I was constantly burnt out and I didn't know why. I was like, this is fun when I'm doing it. And it's like, you know, labor intensive, but it's what I want to be doing. Why am I constantly exhausted? And I realized it's because I was dumping my guts every episode. Yeah. It was either in solo form of just me talking to myself, or it was a one-on-one interview with, you know, someone who was talking about their experiences and me actively trying to relate. But it was always about very intense topics delivered in a comedic way. And then on top of that, my listenership would submit their own stories, not in such a formal way as I do now, but via DM, feedback, whatever. And I was just carrying like so much emotional weight. Yeah. With this show, it's been easier for me to draw boundaries for myself. And boundaries are something I've really struggled with my entire life, because I want to be everything to everyone, you know, but also I want to be everything to myself. So I totally get that. And I think that striking the balance, and but also drawing the parameters for yourself is like, that's an ongoing process. It's really hard.
Absolutely. So I also wanted to speak about really quickly, you were on something called Barstool Idol. Is that a thing? How long ago was that?
What?
How long ago was that?
I was 23. So that was five years ago.
Okay. So then did you have like, because I was reading up a little bit and you were either like kicked off, correct me if I'm wrong, you were kicked off the show or you were asked to leave or for whatever reason. Did you feel like if I was 23 on a show, I would be like, yes, sir. Like whatever, like you're very nervous. It's in a different world and you're scared. And did you feel like almost silenced? And now that you've like grown up a bit, is it a little bit empowering to be able to talk about that space? Cause I can assume it can be toxic. Like think about back to, there's a whole thing going on TikTok right now about how toxic America's Next Top Model was with Tyra Banks. And like, it's just wild hearing. And I remember watching it. Like I was like watching this show, not realizing that it was so full of toxicity and like literally just taking women down and like burying them just by their looks. Can you imagine today? Like that would never fly.
Never happen.
Did you feel like a sense of empowerment after you shared that episode? Because I can only imagine it was hard because it was like a huge thing.
I felt like I was keeping the most like toxic secret ever for 5 years. And it not only keeping a secret in terms of like how I really felt and how that experience shaped me, but it was really shitty that like that footage is going to live online forever. Yeah. And like when people meet me and they Google me, like it's not even those videos that come up. It's horrible Reddit threads about me. Right. With like a bunch of guys just shitting all over me and my character. I mean, everybody does the dumbest stuff ever when they're 23. Everyone is trying to figure out who they are, overcompensating. And that was a particular time in my life where I felt really motivated to like be seen as an equal in like a man's world, within entertainment, within comedy, within just like the media landscape. And like a lot of women, I took it too far. Like I thought that putting on this really like tough bravado was going to get me taken seriously. But also something people didn't realize is that entire show was live streamed from the moment that we walked in the door for our audition. It was on Facebook Live and it was on Periscope. And there were like so thousands and thousands and thousands of people watching it, live commenting on like what they thought about you. And I was the only girl in the competition. So that was my first experience with really bad internet bullying, not just when I was on the show, but for weeks afterwards, even like months. But, you know, also being the only woman in the competition really affected me. It made me rethink my public persona. But speaking out against Barstool is really tough. Famously, because every member of this community protects Dave Portnoy at all costs because that's their fearless leader. And like, I get it. We all need a sense of community. We all want to feel seen. But I didn't want to speak out about my, quite frankly, trauma because I didn't want to get devoured by the internet again. So I was able to release my solo episode alongside this article that came out on Insider about all these other women who had traumatic experiences with either Dave Portnoy or Barstool Sports. So I really was quick to say, luckily, Dave and I never had an issue. I was never sexually assaulted, thank God, as a lot of these other women were. But my experience with that community as a whole fucked me up. So yeah, I did feel really empowered finally being able to speak out about that 5 years later. And sometimes I wish I spoke out sooner, but I also think I needed to have not only the community of other contributors to that Insider article, but the community that I've built with my podcast and on Instagram, who has like the same value system that I do. When I was 23, I was very much online, but it was a very different audience that I had. And I was also pursuing a different audience. So time heals all, things happen for a reason. But yeah, that was certainly a more cathartic moment for me.
What gives you the guts to get out there and not only talk about taboo things, but to be the princess of taboo, to be like, you know what? I'm going to bring up the things that everyone wants to talk about, but nobody has the balls to talk about. I'm the last person that should be able to talk about this because of who I am. And you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it anyway. So what gives you that energy? Because that takes something.
That is an amazing question. And I love when people ask me that question because so many people don't. So many people are like, yay, this is amazing. And not very many people are like, do you realize that like you're walking on the edge of the cliff constantly, which I know I am. And it took me years to understand like why it was that I felt this calling to do this. And like I said, I went back and forth and I rebranded and I shared about myself and then I pulled back. But really at the end of the day, like especially going through some recent personal stuff, I came to realize that somebody who's in my position, who has it all, also has the freedom to talk about things that would get other people not necessarily canceled, but just like it would fuck up their life right away. Like, luckily, I've built this platform for myself where people want this kind of material from me. And as such, I can talk about really taboo topics without having to worry about losing my job, getting rejected by my family, getting the rug pulled out from underneath me by my community, losing my sense of self, losing my feeling of being worthy of love. I mean, that's the sad reality for so many people, not just in America, but all over the world. If you dare to go against the grain of whatever it is that your society tells you, your community, but also the society as a whole, it's so hard to do that. And for years, I wondered, like, what do I do with all this privilege? Especially because I have a long history of depression and I had every resource available to me and like none of them worked. Hence why I got involved in the wellness world and started masturbating with crystals and shoving THC up my ass because traditional therapy wasn't working. And so my whole thing has always been like, how do I communicate that having all the resources in the world doesn't prevent you from like wanting to end it all? You can still be existential and feel like complete shit, which was my experience. But more than just complaining about that, I realized having all of these resources means that I can kind of say, I'm aware of the fact that to a certain degree, I am invincible from the pitfalls of day-to-day life. I'm not invincible against cancellation, which is why I'm very careful about how I go about doing my work. But on a day-to-day level, I'm so protected in my New York bubble and because of who I am, that it gives me the strength to stand up for other people who cannot stand up for themselves. And that's why I also wanted to offer the anonymous format of my show because of people who are not living in the same sort of community that I am. They want to speak out. They want to feel seen. They want to feel nurtured by me, but they're aware that if anyone knows that it's them, it's over. So it's still a work in progress for me. My show is fairly new. I've only been doing Tales of Taboo for under a year at this point. It's going to be a year this summer. But I love like marinating on this question. But I think what it boils down to is like, the only useful thing to do with having every resource available is to try in my own way to give those resources to other people through me. You know what I mean? Like, let me take the heat. Let me get bullied by Barstool. Let me get bullied by anti-female activists, you know, and all of our reproductive health issues. Let people call me whatever they want to call me, because by taking that first step forward, I'm hopefully inspiring another person to find the strength to take that step forward as well, whether anonymously or with their face and name attached.
In a world that is literally looking at like likes and views and comments as currency and your worth and your validating, I like to see somebody like you who really is like like, no, thank you. We're going to go further. We're going to go deeper in that. And your podcast is also so entertaining and just like so raw and real. So we really appreciate the conversations we've had here. Can you just link, of course, can you link any of your socials and like where people can find you to learn more?
I mean, if they didn't turn it off when I was talking about putting a rock in my vagina, hopefully they made it this far and they're interested in coming to listen to my show. So for those of you who are interested, you can find me on social media at Ali Weiss World across all platforms. That's Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And you can stream my show, Tales of Taboo, wherever you find your podcasts. And that's a weekly show.
Perfect. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you for having me. You guys are
problem.
the coolest parents ever.
Oh, shucks. Yeah.
Remind our kids that when they're teenagers.
10 years from now, we'll ask Riley if she agrees with that. Ali, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Have a great
Take
day.
care.
Bye.
Aside from my soul.